Good morning and welcome. My name is Lisa Davis, and I'm the Vice President at Green Circle Certified. Green Circle Certified is a third-party verifier of sustainability claims. I want to thank you for joining us to learn more about why waste diversion and zero waste are important to your overall sustainability strategy. Before we start, I'll just cover some housekeeping items. So questions. We want you to ask questions at any time in the question pane. We're going to collect the questions and as time allows at the end, we will answer those questions. If we don't get to your question, we will follow up on personal emails. You will see through the presentation, we have 3 polls. We're going to ask you to answer those polls. And once you're done answering the polls, you're just going to click submit, and then we'll review the results as a group. We do want you to engage, so I'm going to thank you ahead of time for your poll participation. I do want to highlight that the chat is disabled, but we can see everything in the question pane. So if you have a comment you'd like us to see, you can just place it there. And then finally, this webinar is going to be recorded, and we'll send those out to all registrants within 24 hours. So at this time, I'm going to take a few minutes to introduce our panelists. We have 3 speakers from Green Circle Certified, and Matt Carter from Cox Enterprise is also joining us. So this time, I will turn it over to Tad Randzinski from Green Circle to introduce himself.
Everyone, thank you for joining the webinar today. I'm Tad Randzinski. I'm one of the partners and co-founders of Green Circle Certified, and I'm really excited to speak to you today. Just quick background about me. I have worked in this space for quite a few years. We actually started doing sustainability work in 2001. And then Green Circle, we started Green Circle, the company, in 2010. And I'm formerly work for the EPA as the Waste Minimization National Expert, and I'll talk more about that and how we got the whole certification set up. So looking forward to presenting for you today.
Tad. Next, Michelle.
Good morning. Thank you for joining. My name is Michelle Bonanno. I am both the Vice President of Operations and the Certification Officer here at Green Circle. My focus is on our standard audit plans and the auditing process performed by my team. I've been with Green Circle for a few years, and my educational background is in engineering and business.
And then next up is Matt from Cox Enterprises. Matt.
Hi, everyone. Like they said, my name is Matt Carter. Serve as the program manager, for recycling waste diversion here at Cox Enterprises. Prior to Cox, I was at Interface, Rubicon, and IHG. So have been in and around sustainability for my entire professional career. Love our partnership with Green Circle, so very excited to be here today. Thanks.
Matt. And finally, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Elisa. I'm incredibly excited to be here. As Elisa mentioned, my name is Ryan Hines, and I am the account manager within Green Circle. And what that means, my responsibilities are really to look at the feasibility and the viability of certification for a lot of companies in almost type of industry.
Thank you, Ryan. And with that, we will get started with Tad, who will talk about the impacts of waste. Tad.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate the introduction here. And I will say that having worked at the Environmental Protection Agency for 10 years in the role of Waste Minimization National Expert, waste is definitely something that I get really excited about. And, you know, I always like to look at how people are managing materials. And one thing we want to zoom in on today here is this is really not just waste. We're going to talk about material management. And I'm going to dive in a little bit on what are some of the impacts and, you know, basically go over how we need to use life cycle thinking as we go through the process of understanding the waste we generate and thinking about driving more circularity in materials. So if we can go to the next slide. Before I dive in, I just want to make sure that our audience is aware. I'm going to be using terms. I'm going to be talking about the scopes of greenhouse gas emissions, scope 1, 2, and 3 today, and you know, just basically setting the stage there. So just a quick reminder that scope 1 greenhouse gas emissions are basically coming from the fuels that a company would burn in their operations. Typically, you're looking at natural gas and other things. Also refrigerants and fugitives are in that category. Scope 2 is going to be the electricity and purchased fuels and energy that might be utilized. It could be steam, it could be chilled water, but it's typically electricity. And then the big one is definitely Scope 3, and that is those emissions that are not in control of the company, but you have responsibility for some of the impact. So that would be things like your purchased goods and services, waste that you generate actually falls under that in terms of the management of the waste, and we're going to talk more about that. So when I talk about these today, you'll understand Scope 1 is the things you burn, Scope 2 is the things you buy, and Scope 3 is the greenhouse gases beyond your control. So if we go to the next slide, I want to talk about the link between waste and climate change. And one thing that we always do as a company is we really use life cycle thinking when we're thinking about materials. It's not just about, oh, I have a waste, what I do with it. It's more about thinking about how was the waste generated in the first place, where did it come from? Typically, we view waste as lost materials and lost resources. So if you're, all of you that are on here are working in some operation, whether you're in a manufacturing site or you're working in an office building or whatever, even in your own home, you're generating a lot of waste. And we are responsible for the waste that is generated, not only the waste we create, but it's based on what we purchase and what we utilize. So one thing that we find is if we take a life cycle lens and we start thinking, how can we reduce the impacts of waste and the direct connections to greenhouse gases? One thing that we typically look at is many companies can take recycled content materials and blend them back into products, and that's going to greatly reduce the impacts of harvesting and extracting virgin materials, and takes a lot less energy and less impact and a lot less greenhouse gases from that. We also know that any type of organic material that we throw into a landfill is going to definitely be generated as methane in the future, and that could be everything from paper towels in your operation, cardboard, the food waste, anything like that that's going into a landfill is future methane. And we have to realize that's a big liability. Even though our modern landfills do a really great job of capturing most of that methane, there's still a lot of leakage and things like that that occurs. And then we also know that if we can handle materials better and not burn them directly, like direct incineration with no energy recovery is not really something we want to do. And that's direct greenhouse gases from burning materials. However, if we do have to combust something, we want to do waste to energy and energy recovery. And then the last thing we can talk about here is we use a lot less materials and we generate a lot less waste, especially when it comes to like reusing paper and corrugated and all that kind of thing. We're definitely going to have a lot more trees that can absorb that carbon. So if we go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about, this was my main job when I worked at EPA, really looking at this waste management or waste diversion hierarchy. And this is basically what we followed when I was there. And the sad thing is that our society is designed with this flipped over. Actually, treatment and disposal is the biggest part of what we do in our economy. And what we really want people to do is really start thinking about not generating waste in the first place, doing source reduction, waste minimization, reuse, et cetera. And we often find that, many people think, oh, I'm recycling, that's a really great thing. And it is, but it's only a great thing if that's your last thing that you can do, because typically when we walk into any manufacturing facility or any operation, we're looking at those materials. If they're not going out with the product, they're basically lost materials and lost profits that can be, basically generated by creating the actual products. Every time I look in a dumpster or I see something spilling on a floor, I'm looking at dollar signs. So it's really important when we're thinking about anything we manufacture is there ways we can reduce the waste in the first place, not generate it, and then think about how we can redesign our products or our operations to not create the waste, or plan for circular or recovery of materials. That's really going to be critical as we go through here. And we use a term called sustainable materials management, and that does require life cycle thinking when you start looking at what's the best way to manage materials if I can't minimize or eliminate the waste in the first place. And you start going down the hierarchy, and we'll hear more about that later when Michelle talks about how they do the audits. If we go to the next slide, I mentioned the fact that waste is basically covered under category 5 of the scope 3 categories. And the reason for that is most of us that generate waste don't manage it ourselves. We're going to send it off to some company like a WM or a Republic or some big waste management company, or even Covanta, Wheelabrator, different folks that are going to manage those materials. And when we think about waste in everything we do, we're not just thinking about solid waste that comes out of your cafeteria. We're thinking about hazardous materials and everything else. So this is definitely something you have to consider, and some companies are going to find when they do their scope 3 baselining and emissions inventories that they're going to find that waste could be in their top 3 or 4 or 5 categories that they're going to be looking at, depending on what they do, if you're manufacturing or things with organics, et cetera. So really important to be aware of how those materials are managed. If we go to the next slide, we're going to talk about now the impact of waste. Think about it. When I'm talking about materials and the things we use, and you take a life cycle lens and you're thinking about sustainable materials management, if we just look at the impact of what US is using in plastic production, 232 million tons of carbon dioxide just to make the plastics, and that was in 2018. And the scary thing is that most of these plastics don't get recycled, even though that we're putting them in our bins and everything else. There's only about 9% of plastics that actually really get recycled. So think about all those impacts of making all those disposable single-use materials that are ending up in a landfill or ending up in a waste energy plant and not recovered. Same thing with food waste. We waste a lot of food in this country. It's kind of disgusting, actually. But I know I did some work with Kroger on their Zero Waste, Zero Hunger, served as on their advisory board, trying to figure out how we can reuse food waste and things like that. But again, 270 million tons of carbon dioxide, and that's just the food loss. Imagine all the impact of growing, harvesting, et cetera, making the fertilizers and everything else. So using that life cycle thinking is really important. Next slide, I want to talk about the impact on your business. And I can tell this story. We just did a waste assessment recently, and there was a company that was really excited because they were zero waste to landfill, which was a huge accomplishment for them. And Michelle will talk a lot more about what that means. However, when we looked at it, they were actually recycling or recovering a lot of materials that were actually product that they should have been selling. And when we took a deeper dive into what they were doing there, we found out that they were really losing a considerable amount of money. And when we think about the losses and impact on your business, it's not just the disposal fees and handling, but it's also the cost of the materials. And if you have products that you're losing that aren't going out to the customer, and they're ending up in recycling, and let's say you're paying $5 a pound for this material and you're getting 5 cents a pound to recycle it, that's a huge loss. And really using that waste minimization, using that sustainable materials management and life cycle thinking is really critical. So really important how you think about materials in your site. And this is all going to link back now. We're going to talk about some regulations if we go to the next slide. And you'll see here, there's a lot of different things that are driving this. Many people are making big commitments in terms of how they're going to be zero waste to landfill, or they're going to work on reducing their waste as part of their sustainability goals. There are definitely voluntary frameworks where you can report this. I understand now in CDP this year, you can actually report your plastic waste that's being generated, or that might be required depending on who's asking you to report to CDP. And then even the Science-Based Target Initiative, which is definitely a voluntary commitment to meet the goals of the Paris Accord and keep global warming down. I noticed that the pharmaceutical industry, for example, is sending letters to all their suppliers asking them to set science-based targets. And one of the other things they're asking those suppliers to do is to look at the waste they generate and really focus on reducing waste, especially solvents. So definitely seeing a lot of this, and voluntary frameworks like EcoVadis, Common Materials Framework, et cetera, are taking a hard look at waste. So waste is definitely getting attention. And the next slide we're going to talk about is some of the activities around regulatory drivers. And this one is a big one, CSRD. We're really looking at this closely. We're helping a couple companies right now as they try to figure out what they're going to do in terms of compliance with CSRD. And CSRD is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive coming out of the European Union. Along with that law, there's these actions that have to happen. It's basically, there's a framework of what's called European Sustainability Reporting Standards, ESRS. And in those standards, ESRS number 5 covers resource use and circular economy. And when you dive in deep on that, the reporting that's going to be required of companies for that is going to be looking at their material or resource inflows. That's all the materials they buy. It's going to look at their resource outflows, which includes waste. And it also really drives these companies to start thinking about circular design and not creating waste in the first place, designing for circularity. So this is one to watch, and this is going to apply to about 50,000 companies by the time it's fully implemented that do business in Europe. If we go to the next slide, we can also see that in the US, we now have regulations in California. Senate Bill 253 is going to require public and private companies to report scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions with assurance. That's a key word here that, they did their analysis right. So if you find out in your scope 3 emission inventory that category 5 on waste is a big one for you, this is something you're going to have to be reporting under that disclosure. The other one that we're seeing is the extended producer responsibility requirements coming out in California, Washington State, et cetera. That's going to really drive more focus on packaging recovery. So this is going to affect companies that are designing and making packaging. And then last but not least, Europe is always driving, you can go to the next slide, European waste laws. Really interesting what they're doing over there, how they're trying to drive more reuse and recycling of municipal waste, increasing the amount that has to be recycled and ready for reuse to 55% by 2025, 60% by 2030, 65% by 2035. And then focus on reducing, waste from fast fashion and all kinds of great things. We did a really cool podcast with, on textile waste recently. And then you just look at what they're doing with packaging and everything else. So a lot going on in terms of drivers. And with that, I think I'm going to be turning it over now to Michelle. But first we have a poll. So Elisa.
So thank you, Tad. So our first poll, we'd like you to answer the following question. Is waste minimization a priority of your organization? So if you could select one, either a low priority, we care, but we have higher priority items. And then finally, this is the top of our sustainability goals. You can go ahead and take that poll. I'd appreciate it. Give it a minute more. Okay, Macy, you can go ahead and close it. Oh, that's wonderful. It's great to see that 69% have the top of our sustainability goals, and there's 0 in low priority. So that's just wonderful. So at this time, I want to turn it over to Michelle, who's going to talk about our auditing process for waste.
Lisa, as we recognize the impact of waste, which is what Tad just presented on, the next step is to understand your waste generation through an audit and create a strategy to manage it. The intent of a waste audit is to collect your waste data to determine the current percentage of diversion being achieved at your facility, and also to identify opportunities for improvement. At Green Circle, we audit the most recent 12 months of your waste generated, starting with a desk audit for the information provided by your facility on all the waste streams. But then we also verify the data through a site visit to the facility and engage with your material management organizations by collecting their waste records and collect attestations on their processing methods and diversion rates. This helps Green Circle identify if there's any contamination among the waste streams that's impacting the ability to process it by the original intended method. With the audit and in accordance with the EPA hierarchy, then we can determine a percentage of waste diverted from landfill. Auditing is really a valuable input to developing a successful waste strategy by establishing the facts of your current waste management and provide a baseline for improvement through this verified measurement. Many companies establish a strategy with the goal of zero waste to landfill and utilize a waste audit to provide insights so that the facility can continue to drive change to achieve and hopefully claim a zero waste to landfill status. So what does zero waste mean? Right now, it's not a simple answer. As you can see from the slide, I listed some of the frequently used definitions that are all in reference to the term zero waste. Many of you know that even with the most efficient systems in place, some materials inevitably may be sent to landfill downstream of the primary waste management method. For Green Circle, zero waste means zero waste streams are being directly sent to landfill, and then less than 2% residual of the total waste is being sent to landfill after that initial processing method. This is excluding any regulated hazardous substances. Setting the goal of becoming zero waste to landfill gives companies a driver for continually improving their waste management. A waste strategy will drive the implementation of data collection and internal processes that ultimately move a business towards a more circular use of resources. But right now, without a standard definition of zero waste, Green Circle's recommendation to you is transparency in the definition that you're using or that you align with whenever you discuss your achievements in waste diversion. So as I mentioned, a waste audit can be used to develop a waste strategy. Embarking on an initiative such as implementing a waste strategy, the first step really would be to make waste reduction a company-wide priority and get all your personnel involved. Designating a champion or committee to set an initial goal, promote the strategy, and develop a systematic approach to continually build upon this strategy can be a driver for a success. Next, an audit that I briefly described can support the categorization and tracking of waste streams, so you know where you are currently. Once you've categorized and measured your waste, you can begin to manage it. Right now, if you're not currently measuring your waste, you will need to begin a program to regularly weigh and record your waste by category. Then you can focus on diverting it correctly. Refer back to the EPA hierarchy that Tad discussed and utilize the critical information that you gathered from your initial audit. A successful waste audit or a successful waste strategy will also require ongoing review to continually weigh your waste and check in with your waste hauling contracts to make sure they remain aligned with your strategy, and then identify new opportunities to continue to improve your diversion as you progress with your goals. I also mentioned establishing a waste champion or a waste committee that can be used to really create and build passion for the waste strategy at your company. The support of the employees at the facility is critical because they're the ones who must change their current processes to support the strategy. And they may also have innovative ideas to eliminate waste. The initial implementation of a new strategy will require training on the policies and communication of your goals and benefits of implementation so that the employees can feel connected to the strategy. The waste strategy should also consider improvements to support implementation, such as improving the signage around your collection bins and making it simple for employees to keep the waste segregated throughout the facility. As the strategy achieves your initial goals, we recommend celebrating this with your employees, possibly with incentives to maintain the passion for the strategy. And over time, you may need to update your communication and provide ongoing training to support the new goals and continue to drive focus on this strategy. When a waste strategy is carried out collectively, it's much more successful. And similar to that topic, want to touch on building a strategy that is relative to your culture and your business need. Tad covered multiple benefits of waste reduction for our planet and also for your business. Determining which of these benefits is most important for your business, really which item resonates best with your culture and leadership team, and then developing a strategy that considers both the waste hierarchy and your selected benefits will really help you prioritize your resources in waste management. And by identifying this, you can focus the efforts on strategy on which waste streams or which areas would help you best achieve those goals. Related to areas of opportunity, in our experience through conducting our audits and exposure to various waste strategies of our clients, we really see that our clients find opportunities in 3 key areas, some of which Tad also touched on. The first one is really related to your incoming material. Efficient inventory management can provide significant impact to waste reduction. Possibly consider just-in-time purchasing so raw materials don't expire or become obsolete, which then is a waste stream that you have to manage. Or the opposite, buying in bulk or coordinating inventory with other facilities to better support your forecasted inventory needs, which also could reduce the related packaging associated with your incoming material. Green Circle frequently sees opportunities in packaging because the packaging of your incoming material becomes your waste to manage. We recommend discussing with your suppliers if they can take back their packaging or switch to a packaging material that you can more easily recycle or reuse. The next area of opportunity is the office, which is commonly overlooked, but we see success with strong employee engagement that even the smallest changes in the daily habits among the office buildings can contribute to your waste goals. And then, as Tad did touch on the raw material purchase and usage and impact of sustainability within your product design, we see many opportunities in manufacturing where reduction of materials required for the manufacturing can support your waste goals by eliminating trim scrap, or reducing the number of out-of-spec products being manufactured, which not only would reduce your waste, but could also provide a monetary benefit through better and more efficient manufacturing processes. And last, an item to consider is looking for hidden value items. Could you use a waste stream and actually provide it as a low-cost material to another industry? So I know what I went over so far was heavily focused on manufacturing facilities, but waste audits and developing a waste strategy is applicable to office buildings, data centers, large campuses, as well as individual events and corporations with multiple facilities among multiple locations. Waste audits can be utilized in all of these scenarios to support development and continuous monitoring of a waste strategy. I briefly want to touch on the audit of a single event. So promotion of a zero waste or low waste event is a great way to showcase a commitment to sustainability. The audit of a single event has a similar process to an audit of a manufacturing or building that I already described, where Green Circle would evaluate the data from the event, engage with the material management organizations, and observe the event in real time. Green Circle has performed audits of events such as golf tournaments or 5K charity races. The one thing I wanted to note is that achieving the established waste goal of an event is heavily reliant on preparation and then prioritization of the waste strategy by the event host. And then the next unique audit type I wanted to touch on is what Green Circle calls a waste system audit, which works best for large companies with many sites who are all adhering to the same waste management program. This is for companies that are more mature in their waste diversion progress and they already have corporate-wide established programs and policies, where Green Circle then audits the system itself and then the effectiveness of implementation across sites. This is through selected sample audits as well as selected site visits among the corporation. This audit can result in a company-wide waste diversion percentage. And then with that, I am turning it over to Matt from Cox, who is a client of ours who is going to speak on their recent experience with Green Circle.
Thanks, Michelle. I really appreciate it. We'll go to the next slide. So Cox is very proud to have partnered with Green Circle, certified for waste diversion from landfill validations in both 2022, 2023, and 2024. And we do utilize the systems approach audit, where our waste diversion is calculated at the enterprise level, not that every location has to achieve a certain diversion rate. So at the aggregate in 2023, our diversion rate was 88%, and most recently in 2024, the diversion rate was 92%. From our perspective, the assurances were smashing success. We've certified the diversion rate of a total of 8 facilities over that period of time, and an overall enterprise-wide diversion rate. These diversion percentages and certificates are a badge of honor for the sites and for the enterprise at large. And we'll go to the next one. And so this is a little bit about the culture at Cox, which I'll tell you, having been at great places previously, Cox is a really special place. So Cox has an amazing culture of environmental sustainability is at the heart of it. Cox has sustainability goals in water, carbon, and waste, and I've played in the waste space for the past 4 years. Since 2007, Cox has invested more than $165 million across over 500 sustainability projects. And since zero waste to landfill was the first goal that we were aiming to achieve in the year 2024, a lot of effort and attention was placed towards achieving that. Our CEO and the presidents of each of our divisions are major champions of our work, and employees can participate in trainings, learnings, litter cleanups, and other volunteer opportunities that support Cox's vision to empower people today to build a better future for the next generation. We wouldn't be where we are, and we wouldn't have achieved the success that we have if it wasn't for the operations of the employees daily, making the decision, what happens to my yogurt cup, what happens to my banana peel, and then what happens to each of the raw materials that we go through Cox's process in the automotive space, in the telecommunication space, and most recently in the closed environment agriculture space. And then we'll go to the last one. Thanks. And so Cox's stance on assurance, Cox Enterprises believes that professional third-party validations are vitally important to the transparency, in supporting transparency of an organization's ESG performance. We believe that assurances provide credibility and ways to strengthen the organization's internal processes, methodologies, and reporting. With our program being over 10 years old, we built it to divert waste. We didn't build it to be audited. So the learnings that we garnered from Green Circle were incredibly valuable as we work to share our story in the marketplace in hope of encouraging other organizations to join us along the way. Our work with Green Circle has been amazing. They're great partners, and we've learned more and more with every audit that we do, and will continue to do. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing. Just a quick reminder, there is a questions. You can place your questions. If you have any questions, there's a lot in the audit section, so please go ahead and take advantage of that. We'll open our second poll with, has your organization conducted a single site audit? Have you done a systems/enterprise site audit? And even have you gone to that last step where you're third party verified? You can go ahead and answer that question. Give it a couple more seconds here to allow for more voting. Okay, if you can go ahead and close the poll. Pretty evenly split. It's nice to see people using the resources out there and doing what you feel meets your needs. So thank you for participating. And at this point, we will turn it over to Ryan, who will talk about communicating your achievements.
Yeah, thank you, Elisa. And this has been fantastic so far to listen to Tad, Michelle, and Matt. So the real question that we get is now excuse me, now what? A lot of companies are asking that. Once they've hit their achievements, now what? What do we do next? And that's really what I'm going to talk about. So if we're going to go to the next slide. The first and most important thing is if you're even going to communicate about your waste diversion goals, your waste diversion achievements, is anyone even going to understand it? Is it falling on deaf ears? And what we've seen out there from different groups in marketing research is that millennials and younger generations absolutely understand it and are understanding more complex terms. So whether that is zero waste, whether that's carbon neutral or the circular economy, they're invested in it. And you can see in this graph here, right? They're also looking at, is it making a company or a brand good? Is it meaningful? And do they get it? Which is really the most important thing. So some of the challenges with even communicating any of this is there's kind of this limbo between greenwashing, which most of us know, and by the way, it is in Merriam-Webster's dictionary at this point, so it's that formal of a term. We all really know what it is. It's the exaggeration of products or a brand who's making their products or brand look more environmentally friendly. And then green hushing, on the flip side of that, relatively new term, it's almost the exact opposite. It's really when companies or organizations are underplaying their environmental attributes of their products. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We all kind of know what's happened out there with a lot of different companies who have communicated things and gotten a lot of backlash. So there is a lot of fear, and I wouldn't actually blame any legal departments for wanting to be cautious. But, you know, just like this light blue and this dark blue line, it really is a fine line to walk to get it absolutely perfect. So marketing teams aren't greenwashing, but also you're communicating what you're actually doing. So there's really three main reasons why companies are going to green hush or not communicate and underplay what they're actually doing. And one is going to be the fear of pushback from stakeholders who think that the goals or the efforts and the achievements aren't actually enough. They want perfection immediately. The other thing is maybe those stakeholders are investors and they want immediate returns. They don't care about sustainability. They don't care about environmentalism. They want dividends. They want, you know, investments back to themselves. The second main reason is the fear of failure. At the end of the day, if we put up a measuring stick, or if a company puts up a measuring stick and you don't meet that, again, there could be a little bit of backlash. And then of course, the legal teams are really going to look at the fear of litigation. And that's really caused people to second guess or maybe look at, do we need to communicate this, or is there going to be a direct benefit to us? So why even communicate any of the achievements if there's so much fear or there's potential that there's a backlash? Well, it's incredibly important. And there's really these 5 main reasons that we've looked at. It is going to measure progress. And yes, that measuring stick is a little bit scary. The accountability is scary, but we really need to have transparency and trust out there as consumers. I'm sure everybody agrees with that as a consumer. We just want transparency. We want to know what that company is doing, how they achieved it. Number 2, it does encourage other companies to follow suit. Everybody on this call is an innovator in their own company, is really leading the charge here, as shown by even registering for this. So what you guys do and what companies communicate is going to incentivize and motivate other companies to follow suit. And what happens there as well, being at a lot of different conferences, there's a lot of collaboration at conferences. There's a lot of collaboration when companies are transparent with what they're doing. Other companies want to collaborate and understand how did they do that too. And the last 2 really aren't necessarily science-based, but it does create a competitive advantage. And then lastly, you know, different department, whether it's HR, but employee recruitment and retention with having a positive company culture. Now, one thing that I really wanted to talk about here as well is this quote from the Chief Sustainability Officer at eBay. And it's really that second line and second sentence. If more businesses lead from the front by speaking openly about their goals, this will spur many others out there who are yet to set company targets, ideally ones that are aligned with science. So now that we've kind of built that, why communicate achievements? Here are ways to do that. And this is ways that Green Circle really looks at. There's kind of a smattering here of 6 different items. I'm not going to go through each one of those, but we all kind of understand on-pack is an important aspect if you're a consumer brand. Social media as well, sustainability reports, website, videos, and press releases. But what I want to really get to is examples of how other companies have actually communicated their achievements. So this first one is GAF, and they've taken the route of doing a press release and sending that out. And what they've actually shared in their press release is how they've reduced their environmental footprint at this specific plant through waste diversion, and then what that % of waste diversion is. And one really key element here, and I'll repeat this over the next few slides as well, is they have substantiated those claims. It's not just a press release, it's something that they have substantiated the data and third-party verified that. This next one is Purdue, and Purdue Farms actually created, after they've substantiated and come out with their claim, they actually created a really large corporate-wide culture at this specific site about their waste diversion and what they've achieved. So much so that an employee then reached out to either the mayor or the governor in that area to try to get them out. So you can actually see a bottom left picture of all the employees there and a celebration event that they hosted as well. Obviously, they did have a lot of different things that they've released in coordination with that cultural shift and cultural change as well, including their stewardship report. Now, this one's a little bit unique and it's kind of small to see, but I really wanted to pull out here somebody who's reporting something in a transparent metric. And what this actually is Pfizer, and it's their EHS KPIs. And it's really surrounding, in the green there highlighted, is their scope 3 emissions for purchased goods and services that Tad had talked about, and also their waste generated in their operations. And really what's important to this is you're seeing a year-over-year look from 2019 to 2022 of where they are. Is there regression? Are they doing better? So it's a really great look at even all of their different waste streams in that table at the very bottom as well. And then this last portion is Alcon, which is in the pharmaceutical industry as well. They have put things in their sustainability report. You can see each of the topics that they really have with their purpose and their strategy. You can look at their current progress towards their goal and what steps did they take to reduce that operational footprint. So each of these, again, I'll just remind everybody, each of these has been substantiated. So all of the data that's in there is substantiated by a third party. So it's really assured before they went public with it that it is 100% certain and substantiated, of course. So now kind of showing what other companies have done. At the end of the day, why does third-party substantiation, verification, or certification really matter? And if we look at the left-hand side, 87% of Americans are looking for green certifications when purchasing a product. At the end of the day, I think Matt said it best, it's really building transparency. It's really building trust and credibility to what that company is doing and what their mission is. Now, as we look on the right, it's the younger generations, and about 89% of them care the most about brands being honest. And that's kind of a no-brainer. We really want brands to be honest about ingredients that we're putting into the food we're eating, what we're putting onto our skin, and what types of environmental claims that they're making as well. Now, building off of that, right, obviously we can see that younger generations care, but how are they kind of identifying what companies are doing better? And this is a measure from 2014 to 2020. And if you look at all the yellow highlighted, we see that certifications are kind of on the rise. More and more consumers are caring that either it's been third-party assured, it's been certified by a third party, or the US government has endorsed it. And really, they are looking at packaging for those types of communication methods as well. So I'd be remiss if I didn't really show, as we're talking here, and also being an account manager, right? We're talking about waste diversion from landfill and what are the different services that Green Circle offer, and they're all right here. We've got 3 different ones. I'm not going to go through each of those because that's really a lot of what Tad has talked about and Michelle has talked about, as well as Matt as well. So at this point, I'll hand it back over to Elisa.
Thank you, Ryan, and we're going to open our final poll. This is about communication. How do you feel about communicating and marketing your waste diversion goals and accomplishments? Yes, I'm confident in my own data. No, I am not comfortable making claims in the marketplace at all. And then I would confidently make those claims with third-party verification. So we'll just leave a minute for everybody to vote. They're coming in. Okay, we have a good majority has voted, so we can go ahead and close the poll and we'll look at the results. So it's interesting. It is definitely, you know, our belief that third-party verification does minimize your risk. We can see most people feel that way too. But there are some people confident in their own data, and then, you know, very consistent with green hushing. There are some people who just are not comfortable making claims in the market. So that ends our content. So we're going to move into the questions, which is perfect. So bravo to the panelists for keeping us with some time to answer questions. And this first one is going to go to Michelle. And I'm going to read the whole question because I think it demonstrates some key elements. So let me read the question. It's somewhat lengthy, but there's some interesting comments in here. Can you expand upon what a company-wide waste system includes? I did see standardized tracking and reporting, which I agree with, but there are a myriad of local and regional variables that affect how individual sites are able to manage their waste streams, different regulatory requirements, access to vendors and processing infrastructure. This can be a big frustration for site waste managers who are asking why they aren't doing something that another site might be doing.
I will take that question. Great question. So yes, we do have requirements to qualify for a system audit. I will note that our standard audit plans all are available for public viewing on our webpage. For the system audit for, you know, a multi-site corporation, we are looking for a corporate standard policy related to waste processing. We're looking for training of your employees to implement that waste management system. We are looking for a standard method and procedure related to the data tracking of your waste stream. And we would review any waste diversion goals. And additionally, we do require some basic single stream recycling, cardboard recycling. But then from there, we recognize that every facility may have individual diversion achievements. As you heard Matt from Cox say, not every facility at Cox right now is achieving that 92%. Some of them are more advanced in their progress with the waste management, and some of them are still progressing towards their company goal. So it's not a requirement for Green Circle that every facility is at the same level of diversion. If we do individual calculations, so percentage of waste diversion for an individual facility, we are evaluating those waste streams against the ability to manage each stream at the most applicable method in that EPA hierarchy that Tad went over. And then if there are waste streams that are regulated, we will review this information, the local or government regulations related to those waste streams, and likely they would be excluded from the diversion calculation. And then for any waste streams that are potentially hard to manage or lack the local infrastructure, that would be something that we would also review. Likely we would provide some areas of opportunities related to those waste streams based on our audit and site visit. And then specifically what I'm hearing is potentially the corporation could also make improvements to their policies or tracking programs where there could be some internal flags or categories that better represent the uniqueness of individual facilities so that when you are talking to your upper management, it's more easily understood the uniqueness between the facilities. But that would also be something that we would really dig into in our audit.
Great, thank you, Michelle. This next question is for Matt. Put Matt on the spot here. Matt's in the hot chair. Curious if you have implemented any reward or incentive system for proper waste management. So Matt, if you can, that was the question. Curious if you have implemented any reward or incentive system for proper waste management. And then like if you can just, you know, maybe even blow it out to motivation, that would be great. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, for sure. So there isn't a direct way at company-wide. I mean, Cox has 300 plus locations. So there isn't anything that's put out there that allows every location, every instance of good recycling efforts to be recognized with an attaboy in that moment. But there are different ways throughout the organization to where managers can highlight individuals that are doing the right thing. We do support that from corporate down to the divisional levels and to the specific sites. We also have a way to recognize individuals with kind of small incentives across Cox's 3 divisions as well. So it's in the culture. Everyone enjoys an attaboy or an attagirl. And so we do support that and foster that culture, but is it direct with Cox's size and scale? Not so much.
Thank you, Matt. We'll send this next one over to Ryan. Ryan, what do you find the most effective channels for communicating?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually pretty honored that I do have a question as well. So thanks, Elisa. What I'd say is as I kind of showed those 6 different communication channels or methods, I would say it really depends, one, on the industry of the company. May not make sense to do a certain amount of those, but if done right, I would say that social has the highest potential for growth. And that's paid, that's organic as well. I would also say, kind of in a similar fashion, we've seen website communication as a great platform because you can really take it down, you can change it. I have seen in the packaging industry a lot of on-pack claims. They want to communicate PCR for recycled content. You know, I've also seen companies that want to talk about a product being made in a zero waste to landfill site. So I have seen that. A little bit more challenging, of course, because you have to talk about taking down packaging if the claim is no longer valid. But I would also say sustainability reports are a really good way. It has limited audience, but it still is a really good channel to tell a bigger story. And then as I shared, I think Purdue and a few others, GAF, they do press releases. So it's a valuable tool to get immediate attention. Publishing on your website creates more longevity out of the press release, I would say.
Yeah, I wanted to just chime in on this one as well. If you think about it, Ryan just mentioned that some companies are saying, you know, your products are manufactured as a zero waste landfill manufacturing site. If you look at the classic example of that, it would be Subaru. They have, you know, basically advertised that for a long time, and you know, they are truly zero waste to landfill as a company in Indiana. And I can tell you that we have employees that work for us that actually bought Subarus because of that claim. So those claims definitely resonate very well with people, just like Ryan talked about in his presentation. And it is something to think about because the average human, even if they don't know about sustainability, can understand that there's no waste going to a landfill because we all generate waste in our homes and everything else. So I just wanted to add that insight here a little bit.
Okay, well, Tad, that's very convenient that you stayed on camera because we'll send the next question to you, which is, can you talk about some of the biggest challenges you've seen in dealing with waste streams and some creative solutions to those challenges?
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenges I've seen over the years with waste streams is basically how do you measure them? Many facilities have situations where the containers or the dumpsters they use maybe don't have the ability to be weighed or that kind of thing. And you know, it's really trying to understand what is the amount of material that is created. And even if you have like a big roll off that does go off or a compactor that's going off and is weighed, if you're mixing materials in there, it's hard to tell exactly what you're generating. So companies, it's really important for them to establish a good measurement system or even estimates of what that waste is. And that way you can definitely put a value around it. One thing that we have seen is some companies will do characterizations where they'll measure how much waste they generate in a shift or a day or a week of certain materials. And then they can actually say, okay, if I scale that by the number of shifts or number of days we operate, we can actually see that. That's definitely something that happens. And then a lot of companies actually have materials that they generate that are really hard to manage. And those are the tough ones. It could be things like weird plastics, for example. We're running into this a lot where companies are generating like mixed plastics that could be like a nylon plus something else. And how does that get managed? Because a lot of recyclers don't want things like that. So finding outlets for those, even weird things that are generated in terms of like fiberglass waste, that we see that a lot in manufacturing of shingles and things like that. So though understanding how it's generated is really important, and understanding the amounts to the best you can estimate is going to be critical. And then there are creative solutions. You can, like I said, do the characterization, or you can actually do things to directly weigh materials, you know, as they're coming off a line or something like that. So.
Thank you, Tad. I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. So we have to Michelle, are reusable products identified and tracked? If not, how does an ESG auditor know what sustainable performance is being achieved or is achievable is the question.
Yeah, this is a great question, because one of the key waste streams that Green Circle identifies through our site visit is items that are being reused at the facility. So many times a client is not identifying their reusable items when they provide us with that initial data. And when we go on site and we're watching the facility during a normal business day, we do tend to identify items that they are reusing or repurposing. For us to be able to incorporate that in the diversion rate, we will, however, need to quantify that. So as Tad mentioned, you know, we might ask the client to go back and try to measure that over a shift, a week, a month. And again, we, as auditors, we need that second level of verification. So it is something that we would want to observe and identify visually through a site visit, so that we can confirm the quantities that we are using in our assessment. And then for it to be reusable, we are looking for that extra step being taken by the client. So if naturally you have some spillage and you already are collecting that, and that's just the natural way of business, we may not count it. But if you have gone above and beyond to ensure that, say, that waste spillage or the trim scrap can be incorporated back into your process, then it would count as a waste being diverted from landfill.
So we're going to wrap it up. We have 1 minute. There's just a couple little items. I want to remind everybody that we'll send this recording out. If you go on the Green Circle website, there are multiple resources on waste diversion. These are just 2 examples of some podcasts. We have a few others. Tad mentioned that there's a textile one on waste, and then we have a downloadable document. And then, of course, you can always reach out to us. If you go on our website, there is a contact us form that you can fill out. We'd be happy to talk more offline. You can reach out to me. I think my contact's on the very next slide, Macy, if you just want to flip to that. Oh, and then, yes, and then we will send out a survey. So we would just appreciate your input. I'm always looking for what you might need. Make sure that we make the most of our educational opportunities, and you're hearing things that are important to you. So if you can go ahead and do it, of course it's optional, but we appreciate it. So that concludes our webinar today. Thank you very much for your attention. And again, reach out if you have any questions. Thank you. And thanks to the panelists.